They said it was madness. A poor farmer, talking to a hen, not just any hen, a hen that talked back. But what if I told you? This was a madness. This was a miracle. And that hen didn't just talk. She saved his life. In the parched heart of a forgotten village, where time seemed to move slower than the wind, lived a man named Ragu. His skin was sun-baked, his palms calloused like old bark, and his eyes held the weight of too many harvests gone wrong. He wasn't a man of many words, but he was a man of deep roots, born in the very mud that caked the walls of his crumbling home. He had inherited a small patch of land from his father, just enough to grow a few crops, just enough to hope. But in recent years, that hope had begun to dry up like the cracked earth under his feet. The rain hadn't come for 2 seasons. First, the clouds played tricks, gathering with promise, only to be blown away by mocking winds. Then came the locusts, then the debt collectors. With every failed crop, his debts grew like weeds he couldn't uproot. His wife, Mira, once bright and full of song, had grown quiet. She sat on the steps of their home each evening, shelling lentils in silence, eyes scanning the horizon not for joy, but for survival. Their little son, Aman, just 7, had stopped asking for second helpings. Even he had learned the rhythm of hunger. The neighbors had started whispering. Ragu's curse. Maybe his ancestors sinned. Why else would his crops die when others survive? But Ragu wasn't cursed. He was just tired. Each morning, before the sun kissed the sky, he would step into the field barefoot, kneel, and run his fingers through the dry soil. It was the same ritual, the same quiet plea to the earth. Give me something. Anything. That morning, though, something was different. There was a heaviness in the air, as if the sky was watching. He stood by the edge of his land, staring at the rows of wilted plants, and his lips moved in prayer. Not to a god with a name, but to something out there. Just one sign, he whispered. If there's any mercy left in the world, show me. I can't do this anymore. He returned home that day with no firewood, no answers, no hope. His shirt clung to his back with sweat. His lips were cracked. And the sun was beginning to bleed into the horizon, another day ending without purpose. Mira was feeding Aman the last of the rice. It wasn't enough. It never was. I'll eat later, Ragu lied. He lay down under the neem tree in the back of the house, its leaves barely green anymore. The roots of the tree had lifted some of the bricks from the walkway. He ran his fingers over them absently, eyes gazing up into the bruised, purple sky. He didn't realize he had drifted off until he was startled awake by a rustling sound. A low, steady rustle, coming from the haystack near the shed. Ragu sat up, his ears alert. In these parts, snakes often took shelter in the hay at night. He reached for a stick and slowly walked toward the sound. Then he saw her. A hen. Not just any hen. She was golden. Not the dull, dusty brown of most village hens, but a soft, glowing gold, with feathers that shimmered in the moonlight like silk. Her eyes were unusually sharp, intelligent, as if she knew who she was staring at. Ragu blinked. She didn't move, didn't run, just watched him. And then, he would swear on his mother's name, she bowed. Not much, just a little, enough to say, I know who you are. He took a cautious step forward. No flapping. No squawking. She simply turned and walked a few steps ahead, then stopped. He followed. She turned again. Walked. Stopped. Looked back. It was almost as if she wanted him to follow her. Ragu had never believed in signs. But tonight, the world felt different. She led him behind the house, where the moonlight filtered through the neem leaves in silver threads. There, she settled under the old wooden bench. Quiet. Still. He crouched down. You're not from here, he murmured, more to himself than to the hen. And then, he heard it. Don't be afraid, Ragu. The voice was soft. Clear. Female. Calm. He froze. Who said that? He stammered, looking around. No one. Only the hen. Her eyes locked on his. I did. His legs gave way. He sat hard on the dirt, heart pounding. His breath caught between disbelief and fear. I've finally lost it, he muttered. The sun has boiled my brain. But the hen tilted her head, just slightly, not unlike a person hearing someone say something foolish. You prayed for a sign, Raghu, she said gently. And I have come. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the distant call of a night owl. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't speak. The hen didn't push him. She simply closed her eyes, tucked her head under her wing, and settled in as if she belonged here. Raghu stumbled back into his home that night, pale and trembling. Did you see a ghost? Mira asked. No, he whispered. Worse. A miracle. But he didn't explain, because somehow in his bones, he knew this was the beginning of something. And miracles, especially talking ones, are delicate things. The next morning came not with light, but with a sense of disbelief that clung to Raghu's skin like the early dew. The golden hen was still there, nestled quietly beneath the wooden bench, her feathers glistening in the soft amber rays of dawn. Raghu stood a few feet away, staring. Was it real? Had last night been a dream stitched together by exhaustion and hunger? But as he stepped closer, the hen opened her eyes and spoke again, her voice calm and clear. Good morning, Raghu. His breath caught. There was no denying it now. No escaping it. She spoke. And she knew his name. He knelt slowly, not out of reverence, but out of awe, the way a man kneels when he finds something in this world that shouldn't exist, and yet does. You're real, he whispered. As real as the sun above us, she replied. But there's little time. I must tell you why I'm here. Raghu nodded, though his mind was still stumbling, trying to find logic in the impossible. I've been sent to help you, she said. Every night, I will lay one golden egg. But this gift comes with a rule. Golden egg, he muttered, barely able to process the words. She nodded slowly. Yes. Pure gold. Enough to lift you out of this pit of suffering. But listen carefully. You must not tell anyone I can speak. Not your wife. Not your son. Not the villagers. No one. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. Why? The hen's voice became firmer. Because they will not understand. Humans have forgotten how to believe in quiet miracles. The moment this truth is shared, the magic ends. I vanish. Forever. Raghu sat back, thoughts racing. A talking hen was unexplainable. A talking hen that laid golden eggs, unthinkable. And yet something about her, her presence, her words, wrapped around his tired heart like a promise. A thread of light in his darkest season. Why me? He asked softly. The hen tilted her head. Because you asked, not with words, but with your soul. And because even with empty hands, you kept kindness in your heart. That day, Raghu didn't leave his home. He sat quietly with the hen, speaking in low tones while Mira and Aman worked outside. He asked her about the world, about where she came from, but the hen remained vague. Some answers, she said, are not for this life. As night fell, she made her way into the corner of their storeroom. Raghu watched as she fluffed her feathers, made a small nest from rice husks, and closed her eyes. The next morning, she laid her first golden egg. It shone like fire. Heavy. Solid. Real. Raghu could hardly believe it. He held it in trembling hands, wrapped it in a torn cotton cloth, and walked miles to a distant town to sell it, discreetly, to a trusted gold merchant who had once known his father. He told the man it was an old heirloom, forgotten in the walls. The money was enough to pay off one of the 3 loans hanging over his head. More than that, it brought food to his family's table that night. Fresh vegetables, warm bread, ghee. For the first time in years, Mira smiled without suspicion. Aman ate until his belly was full. But Raghu? He watched the meat, and his eyes were wet. He said nothing about the egg, nothing about the hen. He kept her secret sealed behind locked lips, and in doing so, he felt something return to him. Dignity. Over the next few weeks, the ritual became sacred. Each morning, a new golden egg. Each afternoon, a quiet walk to town. Each evening, a home with laughter and life again. Raghu began fixing the roof. He bought 2 goats. A cart. Even new slippers for Aman. The village noticed. Whispers began again. Ragu's luck has turned. Maybe he found treasure. Or maybe he's dealing with spirits. Ragu stayed silent. He no longer needed to explain himself. But the silence at home, that was harder. Mira watched him closely now. "Where is this money coming from?" she asked one evening, folding laundry. "I've found a little work in the next village," he replied smoothly. She didn't press. But doubt had already settled in the corners of her eyes. And Ragu knew he was walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one careless slip, and the miracle would be gone. One evening, as he sat under the neem tree with the hen perched beside him, he asked softly, "Do you ever miss where you came from?" She didn't answer at first. Then, after a long pause, "I miss being believed." Ragu looked at her, and for a moment, he didn't see a hen. He saw something older, wiser, sadder. "Do you believe in fate, Ragu?" she asked suddenly. He thought for a moment, then said, "I didn't. Not until you." The hen nodded. "Then hold fast to it. You've been given a thread. Don't let it snap." But fate, as always, has its own rhythm. And secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, begin to crack under pressure. Ragu knew the end was near when Aman followed him to the storeroom one morning. "Baba," he whispered, "I saw you talking to the hen." Ragu's heart stopped. "What did she say to you?" She told me not to be afraid." That night, Ragu sat with the hen again. He didn't speak. He simply placed his hand on the warm feathers and closed his eyes. The hen leaned into his touch. "You've done well, Ragu," she said. "But storms are coming." He nodded. He had always known this was temporary. But for now, in this moment, with food in his home, laughter in his family, and warmth in his chest, he was grateful. And he whispered, "Thank you." The golden eggs brought comfort, but comfort, Ragu soon realized, was a dangerous kind of magic. It made people watch. It made people wonder. And worst of all, it made people whisper. The village was small, and in small places, good fortune spreads faster than wildfire, but always with suspicion. Ragu paid off the debt to Dir the moneylender in one visit, someone muttered at the tea stall. "I saw his wife buying wheat in bulk," said another. And then, the question that would become a seed of ruin. Where is all this gold coming from? Ragu kept his head low, eyes on his work, words few and careful. But inside, his heart beat faster with each passing day. His wife's questions were growing sharper, her eyes searching him like she no longer recognized the man she married. One night, as Mira served dinner, she set the bowl down harder than usual. "You've changed." Ragu looked up. "What do you mean?" "You smile more. You eat more. You come home tired, but not from labor. And every time I ask, you say nothing." She paused. Her voice dropped. "Are you hiding something from me?" He stared at her, the woman who had stayed when the earth cracked and their stomachs growled. He wanted to tell her. He ached to share the truth, to bring her in on the secret, to say, "There's a miracle living under our roof, and she speaks, and she saves us each day." But he remembered the hen's warning. The moment this truth is shared, the magic ends. So he smiled, carefully, and said, "I'm just tired. That's all." Mira said nothing more, but Ragu could feel the distance between them growing like a wall. Then came Bijay, Ragu's cousin from the neighboring village. Bijay was sharp-tongued, gold-hungry, and always listening when he shouldn't. He arrived unannounced, carrying a basket of mangoes and a nose for secrets. Ragu greeted him politely, but stiffly. Bijay looked around the modest home, eyes pausing on the new cooking pots, the repaired ceiling, the goat tied out back. "You've done well, Bai," he said, smiling without warmth. "Better than most this year." "I got lucky," Ragu replied. "Or clever," Bijay said, chuckling. "Either way, luck leaves footprints. And I plan to follow them." That night, Ragu couldn't sleep. He felt Bijay's presence like smoke seeping under the door, invisible but choking. He rose quietly and tiptoed to the storeroom to check on the hen. She was awake. "He will bring trouble," she said simply. Ragu nodded, his throat dry. He's greedy, suspicious. Then protect what matters, she whispered, even if it hurts. But fate does not wait for the cautious. The very next morning, Bajai wandered too close to the storeroom. He claimed he was looking for a tool. Instead, he found the golden egg. It sat on a piece of cloth in a small wooden box, unhidden, yet sacred. Bajai stared at it like a man who had just touched heaven. He picked it up, weighed it, smirked. "Where did this come from?" he called out loudly. Raghu rushed in. Bajai held up the egg. "You've been hoarding wealth and lying to your family?" Raghu's face turned to stone. "That's not yours," he said. Bajai narrowed his eyes. "No farmer lays gold from the soil, Raghu. You think I'm a fool? There's something here. Something you're hiding." His voice rose. Mira came running. "What's going on?" she asked, alarmed. Bajai turned to her, shaking the egg. "Ask your husband where this came from, and how many more he's hiding." She looked at Raghu, stunned. He couldn't speak, couldn't lie, couldn't tell the truth. The hen's voice echoed in his mind. "Do not tell them, or I vanish." So he said nothing. Mira stepped back, a slow horror dawning in her eyes. "You lied to me," she whispered. Raghu reached out. "Mira, please." She turned away. That evening, Bajai left, but not before telling 2 villagers what he'd seen. By nightfall, 10 more knew. By morning, half the village. Some called him a thief. Others, a sorcerer. A few believed he had made a pact with a ghost. Children began pointing at his house when they walked past. Raghu knew he was running out of time. That night, he sat by the hen, knees bent, hands trembling. "They know," he whispered. She nodded. "Then you must make a choice," she said. "Tell them everything, and lose me, or disappear with the truth." He closed his eyes. "What would you do?" She paused. "I am not meant to stay. I was only ever a bridge to your next life. But if you wish, I will give you 1 final egg tomorrow. Then I will go." The words hit him like a blow. He had become used to her. Not just her gifts, but her presence, her wisdom, her quiet. She had filled a hole in his life he didn't know existed. "Will I ever see you again?" he asked, voice breaking. She looked at him gently. "When you no longer need me." The next morning, Raghu rose before dawn. The sky was still purple. The wind was still. He walked to the storeroom. There in the nest lay 1 last golden egg. And the hen was gone. No feathers. No sound. No goodbye. Just silence. Raghu stared at the egg for a long time. Then, slowly, he picked it up and placed it beside the others. But something had changed. He no longer felt desperation, or hunger, or fear. He had enough now, not just in gold, but in heart. Enough to rebuild. Enough to protect. Enough to live simply and honestly. He would no longer chase answers or miracles. He had held one in his hands. And now he would protect its memory. Not with words, but with gratitude. Raghu tried to return to normal life, but nothing was normal anymore. The hen was gone. The final golden egg lay hidden in the attic, untouched. But its glow didn't warm the house. If anything, it cast shadows that grew longer with each passing day. The village, once indifferent to Raghu's existence, now watched his every move. Children stared when he passed. Women paused their conversations when Mira walked by. And the men? They no longer offered respectful nods, only narrowed eyes, as if Raghu were something unnatural, something to be feared or envied. At first, Raghu ignored it. He repaired his fields, tended his goats, walked to the market with Aman. But gossip does not die quietly in small places. It festers. The rumors twisted like vines. Raghu made a deal with the spirits. No, it was black magic. His wife helped him. Have you heard? He talks to animals. One villager saw him speaking to a crow. And then the worst of them. He killed the hen. That's where the gold came from. Raghu heard that one while passing the tea stall one evening. He stopped in his tracks, heart thudding. The men didn't lower their voices. They wanted him to hear. You think I'd be surprised? One of them laughed. Greed makes men do anything. Raghu turned away. He couldn't breathe. At home, Mira had grown distant. She no longer asked about his silence, no longer stayed up waiting for him. She cooked, cleaned, and cared for Aman, but without the warmth she once carried. One evening, Raghu tried to reach her. "I never meant to hide things from you," he said, eyes soft. She looked at him, tired. "I don't care about the gold, Raghu. I care about the man I married. The man who used to share everything, even hunger." He tried to respond, but the words died in his throat. What could he say? That he was protecting magic? That he was chosen by something divine? Even to his own ears, it now sounded foolish. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Then came the knock. It was late afternoon. The sun low. The air thick with silence. Raghu opened the door and found two men, not from the village. Strangers. Well-dressed. One wore a khaki shirt tucked tightly into creased pants. The other carried a leather notebook. "We're from the district office," the first man said. "We've received reports that you've been dealing in illegal gold." Raghu's chest tightened. "We'd like to see your property." Mira appeared behind him. Her hand instinctively grabbed Aman's shoulder. "What is this?" she asked. "Just a routine inspection," the man said with a rehearsed smile. "Surely you have nothing to hide." Raghu nodded slowly. "Of course." The men searched everything, the barn, the goat pen, the storeroom, and then the attic. The moment they saw the golden egg, their tone changed. "This doesn't look like ancestral jewelry," the man with the notebook said. "I found it in the soil." Raghu lied weakly. They didn't believe him. They took the egg, said it was evidence, said they'd be back with more questions. By the time they left, Mira was crying in the kitchen. Raghu sat on the porch in silence. He knew now the hen's departure wasn't a warning. It was a mercy. Over the next week, everything unraveled. The government men returned twice. The village council summoned him, demanded an explanation, accused him of witchcraft, of cheating the community, of bringing dishonor. Bijay returned too, smug and smiling. "All this trouble for one hen," he whispered. "Should have shared the wealth, cousin." Raghu nearly struck him, but he didn't. He was too tired. The worst came one morning, when Aman, usually silent and watchful, burst into tears on the way to the market. "They say I'm the son of a madman," he cried. "That your gold is cursed. That I shouldn't play with their children." Raghu knelt in the dust, pulled his son into his arms. And for the first time in years, he wept openly, not because of hunger, not because of shame, but because something pure had been shattered. Not the gold, not the secret, but the wonder. That night, Raghu returned to the empty storeroom. He sat in the corner where the hen once nested, ran his hands over the wooden planks, and whispered, "I should have protected you better." The silence that answered him was heavy. Not hollow, just final. Over the following weeks, the house grew quieter. Raghu sold the goats, sold the cart, used what little money remained to repair the roof one last time. Then one morning, he gathered Mira and Aman and said, "We're leaving." She looked at him, surprised. He continued, "The land is poisoned now. Not by magic, by greed, gossip, fear. We can't stay." She didn't argue. Neither did Aman. They packed lightly, took only what they needed. No one stopped them as they left the village. No one wished them well. They were ghosts now, once whispered about, now forgotten. But as they walked, Raghu felt something new stirring inside him. Not hope, not yet, but space. A clearing where sorrow had once lived. And in that space, something like light. He thought of the hen, of her voice, her warmth, her final words. "When you no longer need me." He smiled faintly. He didn't need the gold. He didn't even need the miracle. What he needed, what he had forgotten, was already beside him. A wife who stayed, a son who loved, a quiet heart, finally free from the weight of secrets. They reached a new village by nightfall. A small place, humble, unknowing. And in that place, they began again. Not as the family of the golden hen, but as the family who survived her. Years passed. The village where Raghu had once lived forgot him. New scandals replaced the old. Children grew up, old men died, and the tale of the mad farmer with a golden hen became little more than a bedtime rumor. But Raghu, the real Raghu, was not lost. He was reborn. The new village was smaller, more remote, the kind of place where the sun rose without hurry and people still measured time in crops and seasons, not in clocks. Here, no one knew Raghu's past. No one asked where he came from. They just saw a quiet man with strong hands, a tired wife with kind eyes, and a curious boy who asked too many questions. Raghu bought a half-acre plot on the edge of the village. The soil was soft and dark. He built a single-room hut with Mira. No servants. No gold. Just bricks laid with callous fingers. Each morning, he rose with the sun and worked the land by hand. No cart. No animals. No shortcuts. And yet, the vegetables grew fuller than anyone else's. The grain ripened early. The harvests came richer. Not because of magic, but because Raghu now carried something greater than luck, wisdom born of pain. Aman, their son, grew into a thoughtful teenager. He helped in the fields, played with village boys, and often sat at his father's feet in the evening, listening to stories that didn't quite sound like stories. He once asked, "Baba, is it true hens can talk?" Raghu smiled faintly. "Not with words, but they speak, if you listen right." "And what would a hen say?" Raghu looked at him, then at the sky. "She might say that sometimes the smallest creature is the one that saves you. And you must never mistake gold for grace." Aman didn't understand fully, but he remembered. As the years passed, something strange happened. Villagers began noticing things. A neighbor with a failing crop asked Raghu for help. Raghu walked the field, tested the soil, advised patience. That year, the man's crop survived. Another time, a poor widow came begging for food. Raghu offered not just grain, but taught her how to grow her own, giving her a bag of compost and 3 days of his labor. Word spread. People started coming to Raghu, not for gold, but for guidance. "How do you grow spinach without pests?" "My daughter's dowry has left me broke. What should I plant next season?" "My son wants to move to the city. Should I let him?" Raghu answered not as a guru, but as a man who had once lost everything and found what mattered. His reputation grew. Not loud, not fast, but deep. He never charged money, never bragged, never shared his past. But quietly, through deeds, he taught the village a new kind of wealth. One evening, as the monsoon clouds gathered, Aman sat next to him by the lantern. "Baba," he said, "if we ever had great wealth once, would you tell me?" Raghu looked at him. "Would it change who you are?" Aman thought. "I don't know." Raghu smiled. "Then maybe it's better I wait. Some truths aren't ripe until the soul is ready." Aman nodded. He was used to his father's riddles. But inside, something stirred. Then came the day when a traveling teacher visited the village. He spoke of stories from other lands, kings who listened to birds, queens who were saved by frogs, poor men who found treasure beneath their beds. Raghu watched quietly from the back of the crowd. When the man asked, "Do any of you have a tale of wonder?" silence fell. And then Aman raised his hand. He looked at his father once. Raghu didn't stop him. Aman stood and said, "There once was a man, poor, forgotten. He found something small, a creature most people overlooked. But this creature gave him not just gold, but wisdom. And when he lost her, he learned that true treasure isn't what you keep, but what you become because of it." The crowd clapped gently. The teacher smiled. Raghu's eyes glistened. The boy had never been told the truth. But somehow, he had inherited it. Not the details, but the essence. Years later, when Raghu grew old, people from far villages came to see him. Not because he was famous, but because people whispered, "There's an old farmer whose eyes hold secrets. Not of treasure, but of truth." Raghu never claimed to be a sage. He just spoke softly, helped freely, and lived with peace. The golden egg? It was long gone, taken by the officials, melted, maybe lost forever. But the real gold? It lived on, in the seeds Raghu sowed in minds and hearts. In Aman, who would grow to be a teacher of soil and soul. In Mira, who forgave what had once broken her. And in every child who heard the village bedtime tale that began. Once upon a time, a hen spoke. And the world changed, not for what she gave, but for what she taught. Legacy, Raghu had learned, wasn't about what you leave behind in vaults or graves. It was what people remember when they speak your name softly around fires. It was the invisible path your choices carve in the world, a path others follow long after you're gone. It was the kind of story that grew with time, not in volume, but in meaning. And so, the man once cursed with poverty, who once hid magic in a wooden box, became something rarer than rich. He became a tale worth telling. Some say the hen was a messenger from the heavens. Others say it was a test of faith and secrecy. But Raghu never looked for her again, because she had already given him the greatest treasure, belief. Belief that miracles exist, but they demand silence, humility, and sometimes the strength to let go.